a champion for their voice publicly when, they don't want to be the public voice. So I guess, there are folks behind me that, are very happy that I'm putting out there what I am. So, yeah, absolutely. I think it's, somebody's got to do it.
Okay, then it says you were involved in a submarine service. So you enlisted in the Navy or something like that?
I had, yeah.
Okay, and what do you think influenced you to do that? You think that was part of this programming?
I do, actually. Yeah, I think that there are certain factions, including the United States Navy, that's well aware of the product that they need to fill, in the voids for, let's just say, vacancies and seats for, sailors. But I don't think they waited for me to become 18 years old to enlist in the United States Navy to then request the job to be a fire control technicians on up to and including nuclear tipped weapons and having the potential to kill millions of people. I think what they're looking for in that role is something that they start working, or I should say looking for early and working with to create well before the training period where folks like myself feel like they volunteered into it.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at. Like, what would attract you to being in a submarine? It seems like a miserable,
very
be worse. It's like prison.
Understood. And in a way, I guess I would say I'm a good glutton for punishment. That seems to be what I've proven from at the very least the time at the South Pole Station, where I spent a year at the South Pole. Let's just say they were austere conditions. They would often say it's
in a submarine. This is part of your submarine.
No, I didn't go in a submarine. I went in a separate program, working for Raytheon Polar Services under a contract by the National Science Foundation. I spent a year at the South Pole Station, and they would say things that it's a harsh effing continent and things like that.
Yeah, but and especially come from Long Island, the winters are enough.
Understood. Yeah. So
the summer, yeah. But
at this stage of the go ahead
for a second. What about like the odors of these men? You're right on top of each other. How is all that?
They have a device called the charcoal scrubber would be the polite term for it. And the air filtration is extremely important on a submarine, and they have a very high quality system.
Oh, really? So it works. You don't have that kind of problem.
Yeah. Well, the idea is that technically every smell moves around the submarine very rapidly, but then it's also negated almost as quickly.
Just the close quarters, man. I would just terrify me to even think about that. Okay. So now you get out of the service and then you become a plumber. Right. Well, what, in Long Island?
Yep. The North Shore of Long Island, which I'm sure you know to be very affluent, the Gold Coast.
And what kind of plumbing? Just the commercial plumbing or just
residential, commercial, industrial, you name it. I worked for some of the oldest companies that have been around, multi-generational, and just seem to have the contracts for all the most peculiar places that you could think of. Long Island is pretty much a military industrial complex manufacturing facility that's been fortified, ever since it was developed. There's all kinds of equipment there.
Okay, so then when did you leave the service? Because it says in 2010 you got involved with the South Pole research, I guess, for Raytheon.
Yep, 2010 was when I got contracted to go south, and I would say basically I did 366 days straight on the continent of Antarctica.
Okay, wait a second. So what year did you leave the Navy?
1994.
Okay, 94. So you're about 6 years as a plumber. But then what? I guess you got the training for this fire control you described it as, right? Were you doing any kind of fire control outside of the military to Raytheon? No, absolutely not. And then you get offered this contract with Raytheon in 2010 to go to the South Pole.
to South Pole and Antarctica.
And for some reason, you accept. Okay.
Absolutely. I had a lot of trepidation in the exchange, but the fact of the matter was this was, a time, post Obama having decimated the New York economy, that at the time this Raytheon Corporation was the only one looking to cut me a check. So, I had bills to pay like everybody else. So I reluctantly took the offer and, got connected with South Pole Station.
So this was a substantial contract for you?
No, not at all. It was a terrible contract. Again, it was just the only one that was being offered. So I had to take it. It was terrible pay, actually. And they pretty much ripped us off on overtime. But,
Oh, no, yeah, it's not a very ethical company.
I mean, they make their lion's share of money in weapons and targeting systems. So, they kill people for profits.
Yeah, and they dumped a bunch of hazardous waste down in Florida, too. And
I don't doubt it. After I gave my testimony in Washington, D.C. this past June, within a week they had changed their corporate name. So I was very happy about that because I really put them on blast, and I think Raytheon is the devil incarnate in corporate form.
Okay, but you must have been doing well as a plumber, right? No?
No, not really. That's why I needed the contract. The economy had totally tanked.
Okay, so then you go to work for Raytheon Fire Control down to the South Pole and Antarctica. So tell us what happened down there.
The ice cube neutrino detector, which is a scientific array. Man, it's challenging to do it when it's just story time. Because I guess I found out that a lot of the electronic systems down there that are presented as scientific testing equipment are actually directed energy weapons systems.
You hear that same thing said about HARP, in Alaska. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you think HARP they're still using HARP today?
I know they are. I live up here. I'm familiar with every news article that comes out where they talk about it being shut down, and then it's never, ever, ever shut down. It's always refunded.
So you've been out there to HARP?
Twice, at least.
And you've seen it's still in operation?
Absolutely.
What year was this?
I don't know off the top of my head. Like I said, within the last 10 years. I mean, the time I've been residing up here in Alaska. Actually, I think I've been past it 3 times now that I think about it.
Where do you live in Alaska?
Anchorage.
And what do you do there now?
I do remote maintenance still.
Remote maintenance?
Correct. I don't work where I live. So I'll fly out to remote areas from where I live and maintain facilities out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, if you could work anywhere, you could live anywhere then, right? You could live in Phoenix, Arizona, or Tucson, Arizona.
Absolutely. Yep, totally could.
Okay, then why would you want to live in Alaska?
Alaska is one of the most beautiful places on the planet.
You think so, huh?
I know so.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I've had some dealings up in Alaska. I don't find it to be a very pleasant place to live.
Oh, geez.
Or there's living conditions and stuff like that.
Well, you can't tell me everywhere you looked wasn't beautiful, though.
No, I've never lived there in Alaska, but I've just had dealings there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In your dealings, everywhere you looked when you were here had to be gorgeous.
No, I've never been there. No.
Oh.
Yeah, I was involved in an investigation of Sarah Palin and Todd Palin.
10-4.
Okay. And I had an ex-girlfriend lived up there, too.
Yeah, that's just paperwork then. It's not the experience.
Well, yeah. Okay. So then you get hired by Raytheon in 2010. They send you down to Antarctica. And what was your role down there? If your role down there was in fire control, how did you get exposed to this other equipment?
Well, you're definitely mincing words. Okay. My role down there was not fire control. That was a title in the Submarine Service.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The role down in Antarctica as a tradesman, I was contracted as a plumber, and then in that capacity of wintering over, I was trained to be a firefighter. So that basically got me the key to the entire facility and the ability to connect more dots than most people there.
Okay, so then you were an eyewitness to some devices and equipment there, right? And you saw them in operation?
Yes, sir.
And what did you see them do?
It would just be like watching. I mean, when you say, "What did you see them do?" I saw them on. I mean, it's not something you see something do. I don't. It's a really funny way of. I don't.
No, I'll finish. No, what did you see them do to make you conclude that these were some type of directed energy weapons?
It had nothing to do with what I saw them do. It had to do with the getting the paperwork from the manufacturer that says what it does, and talking to the operators who then confirmed the nefarious things that it could do. So it was more through research and networking than through a direct observation. These devices pretty much they don't do anything you can see. That's kind of the problem. They directed energy weapon systems are invisible. So
well, then in order to see this paperwork, did you have a security clearance?
There was no clearance required. It's public information that people just didn't realize was right under their noses.
So you saw this paperwork, and the paperwork is available on your website to decipher?
Yes, it is. In the archive section, you can go into there, and it'll say DOM document, and that's a page basically right out of the University of Wisconsin's operator's manual for the ice cube neutrino detector, which is public information.
ISO neutrino?
Ice cube neutrino detector.
Ice cube neutrino.
Yep.
And what does that stand for? What does that mean?
It's a detector of neutrinos.
Yeah, what is a neutrino?
A neutrino is a near massless particle that moves, as we were told at the time, close to, at, or beyond the speed of light.
Okay. Ice cube neutrino detector. So this would be to detect something moving at the speed of light?
Potentially, yep.
And what are they looking for?
They said from where they were coming from.
So for alien spacecraft or something like that?
That would be what they were not discussing, but on the possibilities list, that exotic propulsion engines that would emit neutrinos would also be able to be observed and tracked and trafficked like air traffic control of, conventional airliners.
Okay, then when you saw the paperwork and then you to speak to the operators, what did the operators of these equipment say to you?
That it's a directed energy weapons platform. It transmits, and we accidentally caused the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand, when this device was initially turned on.
Mm. Okay, and then were there any things that they did on purpose in order to purposely cause a...
Not to my knowledge.
Well, then how did you leave off with these guys? When they first tell you, hey, man, we're using this stuff here, and we kind of caused this big earthquake, how did that conversation go?
How we left off is what I'm up to now, is trying to communicate this information to the world so that we, the people, understand what's actually going on around us.
So then how long were you up there in Antarctica with these fellows talking about this equipment?
Well, you're mincing words again. These conversations didn't happen in Antarctica. They happened post-Antarctica. But I was in Antarctica for 366 days.
Okay.
And I continued to stay in touch with a multitude of people from the program. And it was in those continued conversations that I became abreast of what was actually going on.
So while you were there, all you really saw was the paperwork?
The paperwork came afterwards as well, sir.
Okay, so you're there, you leave. So when you were there, did you have any suspicions of any type of nefarious activities with this equipment?
Absolutely. From the time that I heard that Raytheon was the hiring contractor, I figured there was all kinds of shenanigans afoot.
Okay, but while you were there was no smoking gun evidence for you until you left, and then you got this paper.
Well, that's incorrect. Also, there was another system known as ELF, and that one I did discover myself to be a smoking gun, so to say, because they had specifically told me that it was off, de-energized, defunct, dismantled, however you want to put it. But I discovered that it was not, that it was energized and fully operational. So that's a technology system that is right on the list of directed energy weapons platforms, or at the very least suspect for the activity thereof, with multitude of things that it could potentially be doing against we the people of this planet.
Okay.
So,
and ELF is that stuff that can make you hear voices in your head?
yeah, seems to be on the list of possibilities.
Okay. And what does ELF stand for?
I believe extra low frequency or extreme. It could be extreme low frequency.
Okay. Yeah, and